Gentlemen, thank you very much. With the coalition forces, as General Richard Myers said, on the doorstep of Baghdad tonight. Aaron Brown will continue CNN's coverage of the war in Iraq throughout the evening. But first, let's turn to Heidi Collins with the latest developments from CNN Center.
Thank you, Lou. Here is a look at where the war stands at this hour. Pentagon sources tell CNN the biggest ground engagement of the war has ended in the Euphrates Valley, just east of the Muslim holy city of Najaf. That's about 95 miles south of Baghdad. As many as 300 Iraqi soldiers may have been killed in that fighting. On Iraq's coast, British troops report that Iraqis have been firing mortar shells onto their own people, trying to suppress a popular uprising in Basra, Iraq's biggest southern city. British forces claim to have captured a top Ba'ath Party official nearby and called in a devastating airstrike on the party headquarters. The British Desert Rats have not yet gone into the city to aid the rebels there. 2 Marines killed Friday in southern Iraq were returned to America today. It was the first arrival of U.S. fatalities from the Iraqi invasion. A ceremony was also held in Afghanistan for 6 U.S. airmen killed in a helicopter crash on Sunday. The Senate today decided this is not a good time to cut taxes by the full $726 billion requested by the president. 3 Republicans broke ranks to help Democrats cut that figure to $350 billion. The move to slash the tax cut came after the White House asked Congress to approve almost $75 billion to help pay for the war in Iraq. Those are the headlines at this hour. Continuing coverage of war in Iraq live from the front lines right now.
Sandstorms.
I hate to be obvious, but in order to kill your enemy or to kill another soldier, you have to be able to see them.
Slowed down, but not shut down. In one Iraqi city, an uprising.
Firing munitions onto their own people.
In another, battle in the streets. Snap judgments. Can you trust the white flags and ambulances?
Watch out for this to be a trap.
A day of frustration, anxiety, and determination.
We cannot know the duration of this war, yet we know its outcome. We will prevail.
Live from Baghdad, Washington, Kuwait, New York, Texas, and cities around the globe. War in Iraq, live from the front lines.
Just after 3 in the morning in Baghdad, today the city shrouded by blowing sand and smoke, the smoke from trenches of oil intentionally set on fire by the Iraqi government. Something else you don't see in the darkness tonight, you don't see the closing in of coalition forces, but the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff says they are on the doorstep of Baghdad. Over the next couple of hours, we will lay out for you what has been an interesting, difficult, and strategically important day in the war with Iraq. Good evening again, everyone, from CNN Center in Atlanta. I'm Aaron Brown.
Good evening, Aaron. I'm Wolf Blitzer in Kuwait City. There's a lot going on inside Iraq right now. Let's begin with this. The Pentagon says a massive land battle has taken place between coalition forces and Iraqi troops near Najaf and Karbala. U.S. officials say 300 Iraqis have been killed in that fighting. 2 more British soldiers have been killed by friendly fire. Officials say it happened when their tank was fired on by another British tank outside the southern Iraqi city of Basra. The British and Iraqis have been fighting around Basra all day. Apparently, there's fighting inside the city as well. A number of sources now tell us a popular uprising against Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party is underway, although the Iraqi government denies it. Families of the 2 American helicopter pilots captured yesterday in Iraq have been told the men evaded capture for a period of time. And after their Apache helicopter went down, the men's comrades tried to rescue them not once, but twice. Both rescue attempts were met by heavy ground fire. And during the second attempt, one of the rescue helicopters caught fire. U.S. Marines have been fighting around the southern Iraqi city of Nasiriyah. We haven't gotten the pictures yet, but the Marines seized a hospital in the Iraqi forces where they've been using the hospital to stage military operations. U.S. forces seized a tank, 200 weapons, nearly 170 Iraqi prisoners, and get this, 3,000 chemical suits with masks. There were no civilians inside the hospital. Another major story in Iraq today, the sand. But a huge sandstorm didn't stop the tanks of the U.S. 7th Cavalry. They broke through Iraqi lines and crossed the strategically important Euphrates River. But listen to part of a report filed earlier by CNN's Walter Rogers, driving through hostile territory in that sandstorm.
We have been under heavy fire for the past couple miles, mostly a small arms fire, but the sandstorm has enabled the Iraqis to come very close to the road. And if I sound a little nervous, it's because we're in a soft-skinned vehicle and everybody else is in armor. It's very difficult to police this road at this point because of the sandstorm. Again, if you imagine yourself standing on a football field, the sandstorm is so dense that if you were on the goal line, you probably couldn't see much beyond midfield at this point.
That is a quick overview of the day. The day's lead clearly now is the first significant ground battle of the war to the Pentagon, and our senior Pentagon correspondent, Jamie McIntyre. Jamie?
Well, Aaron, there was quite a bit of activity on the ground today, even though there was a lot of sandstorms in the area that was blocking visibility. First of all, the coalition flew more than 1,500 sorties over Iraq today, including about 700 strike sorties, about 100 targets, including leadership targets and Republican Guard targets. But probably the biggest confrontation came on the ground. U.S. Soldiers from the 7th Cavalry encountered a large number of Iraqi forces, not clear exactly who they were, but they apparently fired at the U.S. soldiers, including rocket-propelled grenades. There was a firefight. It is over now. And according to the Pentagon, they believe as many as 200 or 300 Iraqi soldiers were killed at that location. Today at the Pentagon, it was a day to try to manage the expectations. A lot of questions about how the war is going, and Defense Secretary Rumsfeld tried to make it clear that this war is closer to the beginning than the end.
This campaign could well grow more dangerous in the coming days and weeks as coalition forces close on Baghdad and the regime is faced with its certain death. But the outcome is assured.
The other significant incident today involved U.S. Marines who took a hospital, but they say there were no doctors, nurses, or patients in this hospital. Instead, they say it was being used as a base for irregular Iraqi troops. There they found about 200 weapons and, significantly, about 3,000 chemical suits, and they also released pictures of what they said were atropine canisters. This is the nerve gas antidote, atropine, another indication that Iraqi troops may be planning to use chemical weapons against U.S. forces. Also, Aaron, one more thing. Baghdad television apparently went off the air briefly today for about 15 minutes and then came back on with a much weaker signal. And there's some indication that some of these airstrikes today were an attempt to take out Baghdad television, which the U.S. says is basically being used as a propaganda arm of the Iraqi government. Aaron?
Jamie, one quick question on this battle, this ground battle that was played out. Do we know how long ago the fighting stopped?
Well, we were first told about it about 2 hours ago, and at that point, apparently, they had gotten a report that it had ended. So it took place some hours ago. And again, the initial report is that there were no U.S. casualties in this, and that it was a case of the Iraqis essentially encountering the U.S. forces and then the battle breaking out. All of the Iraqi troops apparently were on foot, or there were no tracked vehicles or anything involved. The U.S., of course, has a lot of tracked vehicles and armor, and they had a clear military advantage, and apparently they used that to great effect.
Jamie, thank you. Jamie McIntyre will be checking back with you in these 2 hours. We believe the 7th Cav was involved in that. We spent a lot of time with the 7th Cav. That's Walt Rogers' group. We hope we'll be hearing from him as he is allowed to file if in fact his group was involved in what was a significant battle. It is, of course, as we often say, a snapshot of a larger picture, but it absolutely fits into the larger picture. Miles O'Brien joins us now to try and help put this small picture in the large frame. Miles?
Aaron, thanks very much. I'm joined by General Don Shepard, and we're going to walk you through what is clearly the most significant ground battle in this rather short war. Based on what we know, we have a lot of scattered stray reports. We'd love to hear from Walter Rogers on the ground. We hope to hear from him soon. He's right there. What do we know about what's going on?
All right, what we've heard is the 3rd or 7th Cav. It's at a place called Najaf, which is south of Karbala. Karbala is about 50 miles south of Baghdad, right here represented by the red tank on the table. Najaf right here represented by the blue table. What we've heard is they stopped in the sandstorm. Either the southern elements of the Medina Division, the Medina Armored Division, which is 10 to 12,000 troops in the whole division there, hit the 3rd or the 7th Cav, or perhaps Fedayeen, a group of Fedayeen. Now the estimates are 200 to 300 killed. I'm very skeptical of estimates such as this, as Jamie said, because you really don't know. The shooters always think they hit what they're shooting at. They're shooting at dismounted infantry there, or dismounted people, so they claim high casualties. I don't think they'll know till the weather clears. 200 to 300, I mean, that's such an early estimate. Do we know anything about U.S. casualties at all? The reports are that U.S. suffered no casualties. That's the reports we have right now. I'm suspect of all of that, so it's very early reports, Miles.
All right, this has the feel of a shift. Where does it go from here?
All right, I think what you're seeing is the battle for Baghdad being shaped. What we basically have here is you've got the Medina Division south of Baghdad. You got the Al-Nida Division to the east of Baghdad. You got the Hammurabi Division to the west of Baghdad. You will see all of those divisions, again, 10 to 12,000 Iraqi troops pounded by United States air power. South of that, as battles develop along the road to Baghdad, you're going to see close air support by A-10 aircraft, helicopters, AV-8B, and you're going to see F-16s and F-18s being employed against the north of the area in accordance with their rules of engagement, trying to weaken the Iraqi divisions before the troops get there and before the troops can be employed against them in the Battle of Baghdad.
All right, quickly, let's look at the lay of the land with some satellite imagery and just give you a sense of what we're talking about when we're talking about Karbala. The key on Karbala, of course, its proximity to Baghdad is part of it, but I counted at least 3 or 4 bridges which cross the Euphrates River there. Obviously, that's important.
Indeed. Bridges are very important. You've got to get across the Euphrates both ways. If somebody gets in trouble, you have to be able to get to them from the west side because they're on the east side, so they're very, very important. They will be heavily defended. They will also have explosives mounted on them, so they're important that you be able to cross that river. We do have bridging on the coalition side. We have bridging material, but you'd rather go across a bridge.
All right, that's the way to go. And one other thing I wanted to go, let's go back to the map table very quickly. You wanted to tell me a little bit about kind of the change in the rules of engagement for some of the airplanes here. Sort of an imaginary line just south of Baghdad. Tell us about that.
What we're going to call that is an FSCL, Fire Support Coordination Line. South of that line, you have to have Air Force or Marine forward air controllers with the ground troops controlling the air, making sure that the air power knows where United States and coalition forces are so they hit the enemy and not ours. North of that, air power will be allowed to roam on its own in kill boxes or against specific targets in accordance with ROE. And the ROE would read something like this. Rules of engagement would say anything you can identify as a military formation or military vehicle, you're cleared to hit it with your weapon.
Targets of opportunity. Don Shepard, thank you very much for giving us a sense of what's going on, and clearly a very dynamic situation. Wolf?
Thanks very much. Good analysis. Devil Docs, those are the military surgeons operating in Iraq, and they're fighting numerous forces as they try to save the lives of the wounded. In addition to the wind and the sand, they have to take up arms to protect themselves against Iraqi troops. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, our medical correspondent, is embedded with the U.S. medical unit in southern Iraq. He's joining us now live. What's happening right now, Sanjay?
Wolf, it's just been nonstop since you and I last spoke. Not surprising. The particular ward that we're in is a 24-hour ward taking care of patients literally around the clock, divided into 2 parts. One side for the Iraqi soldiers, the other side for the coalition forces. Right now there's 16 patients. Several more patients are expected throughout the night. 10 of the patients here are Iraqi, 6 are the coalition forces. It's been a very chaotic day here, not only in the ward, but really around the entire medical camp. It started off with a sandstorm that we've heard so much about. It really brought things to a standstill here, quite literally. It actually knocked over a couple of the medical tents and contaminating some of the equipment. That equipment quickly had to be taken into clean tents, cleaned, and the tents had to be reestablished. Also, Wolf, here at this medical camp, there was what is known as an enemy breach today. That means the enemies were seen within the perimeter of this camp. That certainly got everyone's attention. The Marines quickly set up an inner perimeter to try and look for any of these enemy forces. At this time, we still remain on a level of threat. However, we have not had any further activity with respect to that. Very interesting in this particular ward here, Wolf, a lot of questions about the Iraqi soldiers and what happens to them. Certainly, they are interrogated by the intelligence agencies members, as well as having translators in here to try and collect any intelligence. That process is ongoing as well. But overall, Wolf, a very busy day, a very chaotic day. The Devil Docks are up and running. The weather has cooled here. It rained quite a bit after that sandstorm, and it is actually, for the first time in a long time, somewhat pleasant outside. Wolf?
Sanjay, I know you've spoken to a lot of these doctors, these surgeons. How do they feel about treating Iraqi soldiers who probably only minutes before tried to kill them, and now they're in operating rooms and they're trying to save their lives? What do they say about that?
Well, I'll tell you, Wolf, the point was very poignantly made by one of the doctors. The first operation that was actually performed here was one that we witnessed and we brought to the viewers of CNN. It came right on the heels of many of these Marines hearing about the killing of 4 soldiers by the Iraqi soldiers. And so you really had a contrast. One doctor put it to me, we're operating on their guys while they're killing ours. That was exactly what he said, a particularly poignant remark. But I will tell you this, despite how they may feel, despite their emotional feelings about it, they're very clear in terms of triage. It is medical triage. The sickest patients, the patients who are most likely to benefit from an operation, they will go first. No matter whether they're coalition forces or Iraqi forces, whoever's sickest, whoever benefits from the operation will go first. Very clear medical triage, not political triage. Wolf?
It's hard for a lot of our average viewers, I'm sure, to understand, but that's the medical tradition, including in the U.S. military. These Navy doctors working with the Marines now on the front lines, and our Dr. Sanjay Gupta is there as well. Sanjay, thanks very much. Stay safe out there in Iraq. At least 43 members of the coalition fighting force have died in Operation Iraqi Freedom. CNN's latest count shows that 23 Americans and 20 British troops have been killed since the war began. 20 of those coalition deaths came in combat. One American died in a grenade attack allegedly by a fellow soldier. The other deaths are the result of accidents. In addition, 7 U.S. troops are known to be held prisoner in Iraq. At least 6 others are missing in action. British military officials say 2 British soldiers were killed by friendly fire Tuesday night outside Basra. Iraq's information minister says 78 Iraqi civilians have been killed in coalition bombing raids. Aaron?
Well, if the president talked about the obstacles of war during a speech today at the Pentagon, he said, quote, "We cannot know the duration of this war, yet we know its outcome." He also thanked the families who have suffered great losses and asked Congress to act quickly on his $75 billion supplemental budget request to cover the cost of the war.
The wartime supplemental is directly related to winning this war and to securing the peace that will follow this war. I ask Congress to act quickly and responsibly.
This shows you just how quickly the costs of a war can add up. Wednesday's so-called decapitation strike, which started the war in Baghdad, used 39 cruise missiles at roughly $600,000 apiece, roughly. That airstrike alone cost more than $23 million. Meanwhile, there are questions from Congress on whether the United States can afford both the war and the president's tax cut. The Senate, with a Republican majority, voted 51 to 48 to slash the tax cut basically in half. War is dominating the airwaves, of course. Coming up, we'll ask whether all the media coverage is having an impact on public opinion. One part of that coverage, prisoners of war, of course, and we'll hear from some of their families as well. Our coverage of war in Iraq continues with some of the pictures.
So now they're sent deeper into Iraq, to another objective, to another reported hotspot. On the road, they witness a deteriorating country. Villagers wave at them as they pass by. Bombed out Iraqi military hardware off the road. More detained Iraqis, perhaps civilian, perhaps not. The omnipresent, smiling face of Saddam Hussein greeting them upon their arrival.
iPad, do you have visual on that, over?
Their work begins right away.
We're taking gunfire from them.
Out in the distance, ununiformed Iraqi soldiers again fighting what the Marines consider an unfair fight. Potshots from men in civilian clothing dispersed among the civilian population. The response of choice is to use missiles, mortars, and bullets, virtually guaranteeing the obliteration of the opponent. Shortly after opening their fire, an ambulance rolls up.
Watch out for this to be a trap.
It's too hard for them to see through their binoculars who's getting in. But the image is a reminder that their weapons have no conscience. Presumed civilians, men, women, and children, wave a white flag to surrender. These are not the gunmen they're looking for. The cat and mouse game is not one Marines like to play.
Where the hell are we going to bring these EPWs?
As hours drag on, frustration overtakes inhibition. So Marines wait for the order to fire once again, knowing no matter how well they kill, in this situation, it's hard for any of them to be heroes. Jason Bellini, CNN, with the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit in southern Iraq.
Man, that is a fantastic look at what the Pentagon planners would call the asymmetrical war, the way the Iraqis are fighting this. That is something. Still ahead tonight, we'll put it all in the larger picture. Urban warfare, how will U.S. forces take on Saddam Hussein's best trained and most loyal fighters as the war in Iraq coverage continues here on CNN.
This new quick rent at National Car Rental. When you get to the airport, they let you choose your own car. Whatever make and model you want.
Whatever color you want.
You can walk right past the counter. And you don't stand in any lines.
All you need is a major credit card and access to the internet. You rent online at nationalcar.com.
They ought to call it quick and easy.
Bypass the counter.
You don't have to stand in line. Choose your own car. Click, click, click on the computer.
It's all about me, Rent. Huh?
Choose the rental car company that lets you choose your own car. Quick rent at nationalcar.com.
Coming to DVD. Before the Silence of the Lambs, there is Red Dragon. Let the DVD take you inside the mind of Hannibal Lecter. Hosted by Hannibal Lecter. Red Dragon. Own it on April 1st. You decided. Once again, CNN is #1. For trust and experience, Americans choose CNN as the most credible news source. More than MSNBC or Fox News. More than any network, newspaper, or magazine. CNN is the most trusted name in news.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Heidi Collins at the CNN Center in Atlanta. Our coverage continues right after these headlines. What may have been the biggest land battle between coalition and Iraqi forces is over. The Pentagon says the fighting east of Najaf killed as many as 300 Iraqi soldiers. British forces pounded the city of Basra with tank fire and missiles today. British officials say Iraqis in the city had revolted against the ruling Ba'ath Party. A second day of intense fighting was seen in Nasiriyah as U.S. Marines moved through the area. Iraqi forces could be trying to set up a smoke screen around Baghdad. The Pentagon says the city is surrounded with oil-filled trenches that are being set on fire to make coalition attacks more difficult. U.S. Marines say they have seized Iraqi weapons in a hospital in Nasiriyah. The seizure included containers of atropine used to counteract chemical nerve agents. More than 200 weapons, along with 170 Iraqi soldiers, were captured in that operation. U.S. Army Sergeant Hassan Akbar is in a military confinement center in Germany today, awaiting formal charges. Akbar is suspected of killing one U.S. soldier and wounding 15 others in a grenade and small arms attack at a camp in Kuwait. In the next half hour of CNN's coverage of the war in Iraq, we'll take you to the front lines of the battle for Nasiriyah, where it's hard to tell the civilians from the fighters. See what tactics the coalition may use if it comes down to urban warfare in Baghdad. Plus, how people's attitudes are being affected by the coverage of the war, the prisoners, and the casualties. Now back to CNN's continuing coverage of the war in Iraq.
Welcome back. I'm Wolf Blitzer reporting tonight live from Kuwait City. For the last few nights, coalition and Iraqi forces have been locked in a bloody battle for the key southern city of Nasiriyah. CNN's Alessio Vinci is embedded with the U.S. Marines in Nasiriyah. He filed this report earlier.
The battle in Nasiriyah between U.S. Marines and Iraqi military continued for a second straight night, and it was the most intense yet. Heavy machine gun fire, mortars and helicopter gunships were all involved in the fight as the U.S. military pushes north towards Baghdad. The fight was so intense and the front lines so fluid that a U.S. Marine unit involved in the battle mistakenly took U.S. forces staged nearby as opposing forces.
Are you okay? Yeah, I got one Marine shot.
The Marine was lightly wounded in the shoulder and immediately evacuated, as others frantically tried to identify themselves using chemical lights and special signs. Later in the day, a nasty sandstorm and rain prevented forces on all sides from fighting and allowed the U.S. military to deal with some civilian casualties. Some of them have been flexi-cuffed because U.S. military commanders believe they may be members of a paramilitary group to whom they attribute the stiff resistance against U.S. forces in Nasiriyah.
U.S. military commanders here say among Iraqi forces on the other side of the front line are so-called Saddam's Fedayeen paramilitary group. They are a concern to U.S. forces here because one of the tactics of the Fedayeen is to mingle among civilians. And the U.S. Marines here say they want to avoid as much as possible killing civilians.
The commanders have identified that certain civilian vehicles with certain markings and certain colors have been deemed as resupply vehicles. And that's the way these guys work, you know. They'll stage or cache weapons and ammunition out here. So we've been authorized to engage certain civilian vehicles.
Marine commanders say the driver of this truck refused to stop and drove through a checkpoint at high speed, a violation of the current rules of engagement, so they shot at it. They say such vehicles may carry hidden weapons and perhaps even fertilizer, which could be used as an explosive. For now, though, they have been too busy fighting to verify the contents. Alessio Vinci, CNN, with the U.S. Marines in Nasiriyah, Iraq.
Iraqi troops are said to be surrounding Baghdad, pulling closer to the city in a ring around the city as U.S. forces and coalition forces generally move closer to the city as well. The Battle of Baghdad. CNN's Miles O'Brien and our military analyst in this hour, General Don Shepard, join us now to map out the strategies of the toughest of all forms of warfare, street to street. Gentlemen.
Thanks very much, Aaron. First of all, let's talk about where action is going on right now, Don Shepard. Right in this area, Karbala is the place where we have a lot of focus. We haven't seen any pictures, haven't heard from our embed reporter there, Walt Rogers, but here's what we know.
Karbala and Najaf reportedly either contact with the sovereign elements of the Medina division, which is south of Baghdad, or perhaps a Fedayeen irregular militia. Don't know which. Reportedly 200 to 300 casualties inflicted by the Marines, no Marine losses.
Steep battles in here, but once we get to Baghdad, once the U.S. gets to Baghdad, who knows what lies in store. Let's take a look at a scenario here, which we can tell you a little bit about urban warfare and give you some. This is a 101 version, maybe a little less than 101, but go ahead and we'll give it a try. First of all, we're trying to show you a scenario where the object is a building inside downtown Baghdad. What are we showing here?
Well, basically, you're showing that they have protected the building with tanks that are close to a mosque. We do not want to hit the mosque. It's very difficult. That's something we have to deal with.
All right, up and over the mosque we go. And here we are depicting a typical scenario on an important place where somebody of the ilk of Saddam Hussein might be, guarded by snipers.
Yep.
And then on top of the building, excuse me, anti-aircraft, which can also be used as anti-tank and anti-personnel.
You bet. Can shoot down as well as up. This is protected by snipers and by troops surrounding the building. It's perhaps a palace or a bunker of some type of leadership target.
All right, and here's the scene that is reminiscent from Black Hawk Down in some sense. We've got the Apache helicopters, Black Hawk helicopters, escorting a convoy of armored personnel carriers, Bradley fighting vehicles. And as they approach, those Apache attack helicopters lay down some fire, and then they, what's the key in all of this, Don Shepard?
The idea is basically the helicopters are there to support the ground elements. We're trying to show not tactics, but the difficulty of warfare. Could be snipers on all of these buildings. You've got air support from the helicopters. You can bring in air support from the Air Force, Navy, and Marines as well. This is difficult stuff in downtown Baghdad, something that we do not want to do.
It is the thing you want to avoid, perhaps more than anything in all of this. May be inevitable.
May be inevitable. You got 3 divisions surrounding Baghdad right now with 4 others that can be brought into Baghdad to defend it. This will be a tough fight if it goes to downtown Baghdad.
Don Shepard, thanks very much. Aaron.
Thank you, gentlemen. We've seen a good deal just in this last half hour of how the coalition side is fighting the war. We have to this point seen very little of how the Iraqis are viewing this, but these are pictures broadcast on Iraqi TV, Iraqi troops with grenade launchers. Much of the world is seeing these pictures as well. They're being broadcast, of course, throughout the Arab world, taking defensive positions behind the bunkers. That's what you see them doing there. Not the most sophisticated of weapons, of course, but there's a resupply operation going on, ammo being delivered, food supplies being delivered. All of this going on the Iraqi side of the line. When you compare the level of sophistication of the coalition side to the Iraqi side, there's an enormous difference, but bullets don't know technology. They just kill, and they can kill as easily from the back of that truck as anywhere else. Our coverage continues in a moment.
CNN Tonight, families of POWs, plus journalist Bob Simon in Iraqi Gulf War prisoner. Only on Larry King Live, CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
It's a world where opportunity knocks not once, but twice. It's a return engagement on one of the best deals ever offered on a 2003 Ford Ranger. For just $229 a month with $728 due at signing, you can lease a Ranger Super Cab 4x4 with automatic. This is a special allocation of well-equipped Ford Rangers for only $229 a month. This deal ends March 31st, and when they're gone, they're gone. See your New England Ford dealer today.
Get to the grand opening of Dick's Sporting Goods, now open in Warwick and North Attleboro, with everything you need for every sport you play, all at the lowest prices guaranteed. Remember, every season starts at Dick's.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Pictures of soldiers and tanks enduring an intense sandstorm seem to be the images of the day. But the rough weather is also affecting the coalition air campaign. CNN's Gary Tuchman is embedded with U.S. Air Force personnel near the Iraqi border. He's joining us now live with a video phone report. Gary, tell our viewers why air power is affected by the weather.
Well, it's hard for me to hear what you were saying to me, but let me just start by saying that the air war has slowed down quite a bit today, and it's important because they do protect the ground troops. But it slowed down not because of any tactical reasons, but because of the weather. We've had very, very windy conditions, heavy rains, thunder and lightning, and because of that, planes like these A-10 attack planes behind me haven't been going out as much as they were the previous 4 days. We're at a base near the Iraqi border. We were seeing 10 to 15 flights on an average an hour over the past 4 days. Today it's been 3 or 4 because of the weather, but it's expected to pick up again once again tomorrow. We are told by Air Force officials here that the Iraqi government still has them. There's a plane landing right now as we speak, or actually taking off as we speak. So it'll get very loud. One more is coming now too. You'll take a look at it. 15 times an hour, and speak what it does to your ears. Anyway, I will continue. People here, the officials, the Air Force officials here are saying the Iraqi government still has 300 fighter planes in Iraq, but not one of them has taken to the sky over the past 4 days. The Air Force says it has complete control over the Iraqi skies. Nevertheless, they're also saying that 80% of the planes that have taken off from here have had anti-aircraft fire or missiles shot at them. That's what they're also saying, but none of those missiles or AAA, anti-aircraft artillery, has hit any of the planes. Now, a short time ago, we talked with the pilot of an F-16 fighter plane. She told us that she has been shot at by a missile. It didn't hit her, obviously. She also says today when she flew on a mission to Iraq, lightning struck her plane, but her plane is okay. And then she told us about today's mission. You just came back a couple of hours ago from Iraq. A lot of people also may not realize that F-16 pilots fly by themselves. You're the only one on that plane. You drop the bombs, you fly the plane. Where did you go and what did you do?
We went up into northern Iraq in support of some of the Army forces, and they were calling us in with our JDAM series targets, our GPS-guided weapons, to put the bombs on a road intersection, which was right in the middle of an engagement they were having with the enemy. And they said that the bombs that we put into that place actually ended up ending the conflict there.
She doesn't want to say her name on television, but right now we're going to get one more plane taken off, so we're going to have to be quiet for a second. And another one is following it. They go in 2s and 3s all the time, never by themselves. Into the sky, they're both heading to Iraq. We want to tell you her name, that pilot, her call sign, her nickname, which she wears on her suit, is Thumper. She's from San Antonio, Texas. Her husband is also a fighter pilot, but he's in the United States right now. Just in case you didn't know, women are allowed to be combat pilots. They can fly any Air Force plane a man flies. We want to add to you, we're being told by Air Force officials there are now over 2,000 aircraft being used in the air war against Iraq. In addition, you've heard about the leaflets being dropped in Iraq. You heard about it before the war started. They're still doing it. They have dropped over the last 5 weeks 26 million leaflets over the nation of Iraq. There are 25 million people who live in Iraq. Gives you an idea. That's more than one leaflet for every person who lives in the country. Wolf, back to you.
Gary Tuckman, he's at an air base not far from the Iraqi border, a very busy air base and still continuing to be busy, Aaron. I'm sure it's not going to ease up anytime soon. Back to you.
No, I don't think so. Even against the night sky and even with the graininess of the video phone, there is something remarkably powerful about seeing that plane take off, whether it is the live video phone pictures or live satellite pictures. There are a number of ways to show the power and of this war. One of them is through the still photographers. The still photographers of news organizations have been turning out some truly remarkable images that set the scene in ways different from the way video cameras do. One of the best is Vincent Laforet, Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer for the New York Times. He spent the early part of the war aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln and has filed this series of stills for the New York Times.
My name is Vincent Laforet. I'm a staff photographer with the New York Times, and I'm out here on the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Persian Gulf, documenting the lives of the sailors and aviators out here during the war. They've been out here for 9 months. It was one of the longer deployments. And, you know, I mean, living here is kind of living through Groundhog Day every day. They're incredibly focused. The carrier deck has been called some of the, you know, one of the most dangerous, I think it's 400-yard areas in the world. It's really easy to get seriously injured, if not killed, on the deck if you don't always keep your wits about you. They're very professional. Everyone knows their place. They know where to go and when not to go. Obviously, you can't hear anything on the deck. Everything's done through visual signals, hand signals. You have these, you know, these huge jets taking off from 0 to almost 200 miles an hour in a matter of seconds, and landing, you know, in less than 2 seconds. And it's actually a very small deck when you're on it. One of the big challenges of the photojournalist is to not only show pictures of jets taking on and off, but to give the people back at home a sense of what it's like to live on a carrier with, you know, with 5,000 other people. These people have very little privacy. They have, you know, 10, 15, 20 minutes a day where they can spend, you know, in total silence by themselves, reading a book, or of course sleeping. But they live in these living quarters with up to 6 people, you know, stacked on top of one another. So whenever they can, whenever things slow down, they try, you know, and take a little nap here or there. I'm just amazed at how mature, how professional, how hardworking they really are. I mean, try and find an 18 or 19-year-old anywhere in the world that'll work 7-day weeks for 9 months straight and be in charge of guiding a $20 or $40 million jet, you know, across the deck. These are really impressive people.
Announcing non-drowsy allergy medicine you can take right when you need it.
It's Alavert. New Alavert starts dissolving the instant it touches your tongue, without water. So Alavert is non-drowsy relief you can take inside,
Outside,
in your car.
wherever you are.
Get prescription-strength, non-drowsy, 24-hour relief. Even Claritin can't beat. New quick-dissolving Alavert.
Allergy medicine you can take right when you need it, wherever you are.
Trying to remember what day the free shipping offer is over? At Gateway, shipping is always included on our home PCs. Plus, Gateway desktops have everything you need built right in from the start. A fast processor, big hard drive, CD burner and DVD drive, lots of memory, and a big monitor. And shipping's always included on our home PCs. Call, click, or come in. Gateway. Gateway 500 series PCs feature Intel Pentium 4 processors.
Complete coverage of the war in Iraq, the latest on the uprising in Basra, new chemical weapons fears as troops approach Baghdad, and POW families join Larry King at 9. Stay with CNN, the most trusted name in news.
One of the odd items to come out today, Wall Street has decided to pull the plug on Al Jazeera, the Arab news channel. New York Stock Exchange has barred Al Jazeera from broadcasting from the trading floor. The NASDAQ has done the same. Stock exchange officials say they are kicking Al Jazeera out because they don't have room. They deny the move is in retaliation for Al Jazeera's airing a video of dead and captured American troops over the weekend. A quite graphic and disturbing video. A spokesman said they needed to limit the floor to, quote, responsible journalists. So limiting Al Jazeera was, for them, an easy choice. Wolf?
Interesting story in the Middle East. Meanwhile, some of the region's biggest protests since the war began took place today in Damascus, Syria, for example. Schools, universities, and official government institutions closed so that 500,000 people could take part in anti-war protests. Banners labeled U.S. and British leaders as international terrorists. Over in Lebanon, more than 10,000 people demonstrated outside the UN house in downtown Beirut to protest the war. At one point, they tried to storm the British embassy, but they were held back by riot police. Meanwhile, on the subcontinent, hundreds of activists marched through the streets of Kolkata, India, formerly known as Calcutta. Demonstrators chanted peace and no war as they burned U.S. and British flags and spat on pictures of President Bush. Americans have heard a lot of tough news about the war in Iraq over the past few days. So how are they reacting? Seeing as Maria Hinojosa is in New York, she's been spending the day talking to the people there about the latest news out of the Gulf. Maria.
Wolf, well, there are no demonstrations here in Times Square either for or against the war today. Something of a respite after this has become really quite the spot for people to come and protest. But across the country, many people having very, very strong and very mixed feelings about this war.
The news is inescapable. War is in the air.
In bright, quick streaks across the Times Square zippers and big black type on the pages of the daily newspapers, people can't seem to keep their eyes off it.
I feel personally that there's propaganda that exists on both sides, U.S. spin as well as Iraqi spin. I just hope it gets over quickly and our guys get home.
Now that those fuzzy green images have been replaced by the all too clear images of war, real war, by the sad, scared faces of civilians caught in war, by the frightened looks of American POWs and soldiers racing into danger, and of ordinary people caught in the crossfire and on the run.
It's kind of, comes, home, it's personal now, and when you see people, initially it's easy when the war is not here to think that the war is almost like a game, like a video game. But now that you see people are involved, you see names, and these people have families, they have mothers, fathers, children, wives, so it becomes personal.
All feeding the war at home, the constant debate on both sides.
I expected in war that there will be casualties and POWs, and I think it's a price that America needs to pay, and hopefully we won't have to pay dearly, but we will incur those costs.
We knew war was bad before, and we know war is bad now, and unfortunately we knew there'd be some casualties.
The fact that all this is happening is even more disturbing, because it's almost like, I think a lot of people thought that this was going to happen, so now that it's happening.
Now, polls indicate that support around the country is still strong for this war. 67% saying that they are in support of this war, 31% saying they're opposed. The strongest part of that support comes from the geographic center of the country, with 72% there saying they're in support of the war, with only 41% on the East Coast saying they're in support of this war. But Wolf, 67% of Americans say they are closely watching this war. Wolf?
All right, Maria Hinojosa, I know that there are huge numbers watching this war. Thanks very much, Maria, in New York. Back to you, Aaron, at the CNN newsroom.
Thank you very much. There's a lot to watch. When we come back, we'll show you the mine-sweeping operation that's going on. It's critical for a variety of reasons. It can't get the humanitarian aid in. Never before in human history have so many people been able to see a war unfold from their living rooms. You're watching it now on CNN.
How old do you have to be to run away from home? 8? 68? Somewhere in between? What would you take with you? And where would you go if you could go anywhere? We have a lot of places to explore out there. The kind of places that require a map and a friend. There are over 4 million miles of roads in Alamo Country, and with values like this, they're easy to explore. Alamo, the official rental car of the American vacation.
Okay, people, what now? Systems still not connecting with remote locations?
No, sir, that's been fixed.
Applications not linking with our suppliers?
No, sir, we're good there.
Why are we here?
Shirts.
Shirts?
Yes, sir, we're a shirt company. We make shirts.
Memory upgrade. What happens when your technology lets you refocus on your business? Novell.
You decided. Once again, CNN is #1 for trust and experience. Americans choose CNN as the most credible news source. CNN is the most trusted name in news.
Members of the Royal Irish Regiment are also in southern Iraq, helping American and other British forces out in the desert. As you can see from these pictures, they're in hot, harsh conditions, surrounded by packs of camels. The British troops are patrolling the area and cordoning off dangerous landmine zones. They're also keeping watch over recently captured Iraqi soldiers and their weapons. Coalition forces grabbed control of the port of Qasr the first day of the war, but possessing the port isn't without risk. And now, with Iraq's second largest city, Basra, in dire need of food and water. CNN's Richard Blystone says making sure the port is free of mines is even more urgent.
The desert, the heat, the dust. This doesn't help either. As the human minesweepers try to ready Qasr port for tens of thousands of tons of food aid waiting on ships far out in the Gulf. Australian frogmen are getting wet anyway beneath this fast-flowing cocktail of sewage, mud, and crude oil with visibility the length of your arm.
All you can see in the distance is a dark object, so you have to swim up on it and then basically use your hands to work out what it is.
No booby traps so far, but they found 4 sea mines on a sunken mine-laying boat just there. They say Qasr's now secure, but troops say the sound of gunfire has been spoiling their sleep. British Marines drove journalists into Qasr to show that their campaign's not all bombs and bullets.
It's a huge port. It can take a huge volume of ships, and what we hope to do is to get those ships in good order so that we can get this humanitarian supplies ashore, onto trucks, and out to the people who so desperately need it.
But this is only a snapshot. People have been putting to sea from here for as long as there have been ships. Iraq's other big port, Basra, looks straight across its waterway to its longtime adversary, Iran. And the path to the sea from here runs under the lee of Kuwaiti territory. Result, decades of friction and clashes. This port was wrecked in 2 wars, the Iran-Iraq War and Desert Storm. But the British say it's still in reasonable shape. Until the threat of war shut it down, Qasr brought in 2/3 of the food that fed 2/3 of the Iraqis under the UN Oil for Food program. Now, one berth is ready, and the Marines won't wait for the rest to be cleared before turning on a promised torrent of supplies. Richard Blystone, CNN, Qasr, southern Iraq.
Hard to imagine that this time last year anyone would have thought that what's going on in Afghanistan would become such a small part of the news, the end of an hour, for example. But American forces are still there. They are still fighting the war on terror, and occasionally and sadly they still take casualties. Today, 6 Air Force airmen who died in a helicopter crash on Sunday were honored by their fellow servicemen. It's unclear exactly what caused the chopper to go down, though the military says it was not enemy fire. We're told the 6 airmen were trying to rescue 2 Afghan children when their helicopter crashed.
Here now are the latest developments in the war in Iraq. There have been several major engagements today. You're looking at the 7th Cavalry navigating a sandstorm before they engaged in what the Pentagon said may have been the biggest ground battle yet. It happened in the Euphrates Valley east of Najaf, about 95 miles from Baghdad, and early estimates have as many as 300 Iraqi troops dead. No report of American fatalities. To the south now, this is Nasiriyah. After heavy fighting on the ground, the Marines report seizing a hospital there, a hospital that more than 100 Iraqi soldiers were using to attack U.S. troops. This is what the Marines reported finding in the hospital: a chest of AK-47 rifles and other weapons. Also, containers of atropine used to counteract the effects of nerve agents. Near Iraq's southern coast, the British desert rats are poised outside Basra, Iraq's second biggest city. They report taking out the local headquarters of Saddam Hussein's ruling party, and they are hoping to move in to assist what they describe as a local uprising there. U.S. paratroopers at an undisclosed location took control of a desert airstrip overnight, according to Central Command. The U.S. now reports a total of 14 combat deaths, including friendly fire incident. 9 deaths were accidental. The UK has suffered 6 combat deaths. Accidents claimed 14 lives. There are 7 American POWs and several soldiers missing. The U.S. officials say Iraqi losses are estimated in the hundreds. 3,500 Iraqis are now in captivity. And this is what a section of the home front looked like tonight. Unarmed Black Hawk helicopters and Citation II jets have been added to the fleet of aircraft patrolling the skies of New York City. Air travel is restricted there. The war in Iraq was just one factor in adding to new aircraft to the patrols. In the next hour of CNN's coverage of the war in Iraq, trenches of fire on the outskirts of Baghdad. Will the smoke screen actually hamper coalition troops? Another challenge that may be ahead, chemical weapons. Our David Ensor sifts through the latest intelligence. And at the homes of POW families, anxiety, waiting, and lots of help from the neighbors. Continuing coverage of the war in Iraq live from the front lines right now.
It seems to me that anyone with any sense of what's taking place recognizes the complexity of this task, the importance of it. They're not things that are done easily.
Coalition forces fighting not just the enemy and the weather, but the critics at times. Pentagon officials insist they are making good progress. Good evening again, everyone, from CNN Center in Atlanta. I'm Aaron Brown.
Good evening from Kuwait City. I'm Wolf Blitzer. The war's top story at this hour, a major land battle in central Iraq. For the latest, let's go immediately to CNN senior Pentagon correspondent, Jamie McIntyre. Jamie?
Well, Wolf, I think we cautioned you early on that the initial reports from the battlefield can often be incorrect, and now it appears that the number of Iraqis killed in this skirmish is far fewer than we were initially told. According to the latest reports coming back to the Pentagon, it now looks like somewhere between 150 and 200 Iraqis were killed in a confrontation with soldiers from the U.S. Army 7th Cavalry. Again, still a significant bit of ground combat there, but not quite the number of deaths we were told initially. At this point, the Pentagon is insisting that despite the sandstorms, despite what may seem a plodding pace at times, the war plan is on track and on schedule. The blinding sandstorms that blanketed southern Iraq clearly hampered some U.S. ground and air operations.
It's a little bit ugly out there today.
But the military was quick to argue the bad weather was having little effect on the overall war plan.
It's been not a terribly comfortable day on the battlefield. However, that hasn't stopped us.
In fact, according to CNN's Walter Rogers, elements of the 7th Cavalry used the cover of sand to outflank Iraqi troops, securing a key bridge across the Euphrates while continuing toward Baghdad. At the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld and his top military advisor fended off criticism that 5 days in, the U.S. war plan was suffering from lack of forces and foresight.
I think the plan is finally formulated and is put together by General Franks with some help and some advice, but by General Franks and his commanders, is a brilliant plan. And we've been at it now for less than a week. We're just about to Baghdad.
If you may have created the impression in the public mind that this is going to be over in 4 days.
I thought I answered that. I certainly did not. General Myers certainly did not.
The Pentagon took particular exception to criticism from some analysts and retired generals that the rapid advance of U.S. troops has left a vulnerable supply line that stretches over 200 miles into Baghdad.
I believe them too lightly defended, as critics charge.
No,
in my view, no.
That's got total dominance of the air.
Yeah,
it is not air superiority, it's dominance. They have not put an airplane up.
The Fedayeen are chipping away, it seems.
And these are ones and twos, and that you're going to live with, like we live with in Afghanistan. That's where we live with in some major cities in the United States.
There are plans being put in, or plans in place to deal with those onesies and twosies.
Even with the bad weather, the U.S. continued to use satellite-guided bombs to soften up Republican Guard positions. Here, a U.S. Air Force F-15 takes out a Medina Division tank south of Baghdad. And over the last 2 days, U.S. warplanes trumped Iraq's 6 GPS jammers by taking them out with the very satellite-guided bombs they're designed to thwart.
I'm also pleased to say they had no effect on us. In fact, we destroyed one of the GPS jammers with a GPS weapon. Ironic.
U.S. satellite photographs show that Iraqi troops have set large oil trenches afire around Baghdad in what the U.S. says is another futile gesture.
I would say that those oil fires burning are more a hazard to the people living in Baghdad than they are an impediment for us to conduct operations.
In Basra, Iraqi tactics have forced a change in the U.S. strategy to avoid cities. Members of Saddam Hussein's shock troops, the Fedayeen Saddam, are terrorizing the Shia population, preventing anyone from leaving or welcoming coalition troops. So now British forces are moving to take out the regime loyalists and liberate the strategic port city.
Part of the strategy, clearly, is to de-link the regular army, probably the softer of the targets, the irregular forces, and the Ba'ath Party regime, and drive a wedge between that and the people.
And the Pentagon is accusing the Iraqi military again of more violations of the Geneva Conventions and the war of armed conflict, saying that they were using a hospital near al-Nasiriyah as a staging area for paramilitary troops. U.S. Marines secured that hospital facility, found no civilians there, took 170 fighters into custody, and found, notably, about 200 weapons and 3,000 chemical suits and nerve gas antidote. Yet another sign, the U.S. military says, that Iraq may be considering using chemical weapons. Wolf?
Jamie, just to touch up a couple loose ends, still no sign, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Iraqis to date have had any of their aircraft up in the skies, have threatened U.S. planes. They're clearly afraid to take off because those planes or helicopters presumably would be shot down right away. Is that right?
Not a single aircraft has taken off, although every aircraft the United States has flown has been subject to ground fire from anti-aircraft artillery or missiles.
And still no evidence whatsoever the Iraqis have used any, or let alone have the U.S. has seen any evidence of Iraqi weapons of mass destruction.
Now, the search is on for those chemical and biological weapons. They have some sensitive sites that they're looking at, but the U.S. has not yet found evidence of any chemical weapons, and obviously if they haven't found them, they haven't found any use of them either.
And no Scud missiles, as opposed to shorter range missiles, have been fired yet. Is that right also?
That I am not sure about. I know that they've had some missile firings that they haven't completely identified the missile involved, so I'd have to say I'm not entirely sure whether any Scuds have actually been fired.
Some of the top-ranking military officers here in Kuwait have told me yet no evidence of Scuds, El Samud, other shorter-range missiles, but not Scuds. All right, Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon, thanks very much. Joining us now with a little bit more on how these powerful sandstorms are hampering the Allied advance is CNN's Ryan Chilcote. He's in Iraq with the 3rd Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division.
The entire fleet of the 101st Airborne has been grounded. So in terms of, this is an air assault division. They specialize in moving troops to the battlefield with their helicopters. Well, they obviously can't do that right now. In addition to that, a lot of, when this kicked up, this sandstorm began, and I don't know if you're getting an idea, but it's just snowing sand right now. When this began, it came up so quickly and so violently that a lot of the pilots that were out there, they had to put their helicopters down on the ground right away, wherever they were, inside Iraq, whether it was a secure area or not a secure area. And then they had to send troops out to those helicopters to secure them, because obviously a big helicopter on the ground sitting there, it's a sitting duck, and it's a perfect target for an ambush. So it's been just a real logistics nightmare. The entire offensive capability of the 101st Airborne has been pretty much paralyzed by these sandstorms. I know that the Pentagon has said that the timeline is being held, and this isn't really holding things up. But it is hard to understand here on the ground how you can do much of anything in this weather. Wolf?
All right, Ryan Chilcote, he's with the 101st Airborne Division, doing some excellent reporting for all of us. Coalition forces keep pushing north toward Baghdad, despite these blistering sandstorms, which produce winds of up to 60 miles an hour at times and reduced visibility to about 5 feet. So how much longer will the troops have to endure these dangerous storms? Let's check in with CNN meteorologist Orlin Sidney.
Well, thanks a lot. I've got good news. It looks like the beginning of the end of this big storm system that started off in the eastern Mediterranean yesterday. The upper level low pressure system is right about here. Can you kind of see the twist in the clouds there? The surface front is just about to make its way into Basra right now. Just about that area you can see where the thick white clouds are, and then you get some clearing here as the area of the cold front. And coincidentally, or strangely I guess, most of the sand comes in behind the cold front. So as this low pressure system continues to move eastward, things are going to get a heck of a lot better. Warm winds out ahead of it with some rain have kept most of the dust down in places like Kuwait City. Also had some thunderstorms there earlier today, but the dust expected to continue across Iraq, moving its way eastward and southeastward throughout tonight and on into what is already Wednesday in Kuwait. Now as we go back to the west, you will notice that things are quite a bit clearer, and it looks like the winds are also dying off. Incirlik, 5-mile-an-hour winds. Damascus still at 30 miles an hour. Amman's winds are 2 miles an hour, and they are definitely increasing as you head on into the center of the storm. But the back edge of the storm, the winds are starting to die down. This is what your Wednesday looks like then. Skies will become partly cloudy as this area of low pressure pushes off now into Iran. The cold front itself going to start dying out pretty well, and you'll start to see partly cloudy skies. Unfortunately, because of the dust being so light, it's probably going to stay in the air for a while, but I think the next 24 hours are going to be much better than the previous 24. Wolf?
Orland, Sydney, thanks very much. Weather, an important issue, an important problem for the U.S. troops, but there are other potentially much greater problems. For example, do Saddam Hussein's forces have chemical and biological weapons? If they don't, why are coalition forces finding thousands of Iraqi protective suits and gas masks? We'll check in with our national security correspondent, David Ensor. Also, watching the war from Iraq's UN ambassador to homes around the globe. It seems everybody's tuning in. Stay with us.
See you down there.
Excuse me, is there a Bank of America ATM around here?
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Just around the corner at Field and Griffin.
There's another one at the theater.
Down there by the post office. Down to
Ninth and Main.
Right by the deli.
There's one on Crescent. Another one right across the courtyard. Right across the street.
More ATMs where you need them.
There's one more, right?
From Bank of America. Higher standards.
Time to leave. Gotta get rid of this pain fast.
The moment of choice, Tylenol or Advil? Which will work better on muscle aches? Truth is, with Advil liquid gels, you can feel better, faster. Only Advil liquid gels give you advanced, liquid-filled capsules that work faster, stronger, better than Tylenol on tough pain. Advil liquid gels rush relief where you need it. Gentle on your stomach, too. For better relief, advance to Advil.
CNN Tonight, families of soldiers taken prisoner and missing in action in Iraq, plus Iraqi Gulf War prisoner journalist Bob Simon and the latest from the front lines. Only on Larry King Live, CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
Well, much has been made about the military technological advancement that have been made since the Gulf War of a dozen years ago. Playing a key role in that is GPS technology, global positioning technology. CNN's Miles O'Brien has joined us again to review how that affects the ability of the military to carry out its mission. Miles?
Aaron, we're also going to talk a little bit about smoke and the pall of smoke, which is over Baghdad right now. GPS and smoke, you would think the two might have a problem. Smoke perhaps impeding those GPS-guided bombs. Not necessarily so, as Don Shepard will explain. First of all, look at these images which came across today. Central Command briefing. Huge vats of oil on the outskirts of Baghdad already set alight. An apparent attempt to thwart an attack, but maybe not as effective as one would think, right, Don Shepard?
That's true, Miles. Basically, what it amounts to is smoke does obscure visibility if somebody is just looking through it visually with the eyeballs. The biggest problem this is going to cause is a lot of people making a lot of people cough in downtown Baghdad. We've known about smoke, we've known about dust, we've known about obscured visibility on the battlefield for a long time, and over the years we've worked lots of ways to work around it and underneath it.
All right, let's take a look at an animation we put together here. It's a hypothetical scenario from Baghdad, city of 6 million people. There's that smoke we just showed you to give you a sense of what's going on. It could, of course, that's just one fire we show you. If others were lit, it could be more of a serious problem. There's your F-16 trying to find a target.
Yeah. Looking down through it with the visual eyeballs, you can't see through it, you can't see the target. So there's other ways.
There's one other way to do it. You send down special operations, for example, one way to do it. And they come down with a group of people because you don't want to be down there alone. But the key person in this is one guy, and he has a special device.
Yeah, as the Air Force ground air controller, if you will, the forward air controller on the ground, he's got a laser device, and what he's doing with the laser is measuring the distance to the target. And now he's going to convert that into coordinates and relay those coordinates up to the F-16.
Is that manual or automatic?
It's manual.
Okay, so he's got to know his numbers well. He sends it on up. The coordinates arrive, and JDAM is properly vectored into the target, in this case, a Palace.
Yeah, indeed.
That makes it look simple. It's not that simple.
No, it isn't. Satellite-guided weapon. Now, basically, what it amounts to is this is only one way of working around the problem. In other words, if you can get someone to mark a target underneath the smoke, you can relay the coordinates, and you can hit it with a satellite-assisted weapon such as the JDAM.
All right, a little later we'll explain about this GPS jamming we've heard so much about, but that's for another segment. Thanks very much, Don Shepard. We appreciate it. Wolf.
Thanks very much, Miles. And General Shepard. U.S. fighter pilots, meanwhile, are engaged in one of the most intensive bombing campaigns ever, dropping more than 2,000 precision-guided bombs on Iraq since the war started. But today, bad weather slowed the speed of what's being called shock and awe. CNN's Frank Buckley is with the strike pilots on the USS Constellation. That's a U.S. aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. He's joining us now live. What's happening tonight aboard the Constellation, Frank?
Well, Wolf, rain is an issue for the strike fighters here on the USS Constellation tonight, making the night landings on an aircraft carrier that much more unpleasant. Still, flight operations are continuing, and the flight operations are evolving more and more into close-in air support missions, and we were able to sit in on a briefing of such a mission as members of the Death Rattlers, the Marine Corps squadron on this aircraft carrier, were headed out to provide support to advancing coalition troops, close air support. They go over where they're going. They call that a kill box. That's the area that they're going to be responsible for when they arrive. En route, they get specific instructions on what to attack when they're there. We talked to the division leader from this squadron after they returned from Karbala. He said the calls for close air support were coming in rapidly.
All I can say is it sounded like it was probably pretty intense because they were using so many guys for close air support, so many aircraft. I would say if they weren't using many aircraft, it'd be probably not so intense. But the fact that they were using a lot, I think it was probably pretty intense up there.
Meanwhile, from the USS Constellation, a bit of Navy history was made from the S-3 Viking. That's the aircraft that it was born as an anti-submarine jet, a submarine hunter. More recently, it's been used for mid-air refueling above the carrier fleet. When the carrier planes take off, they usually get a little gas on their way to the target or a little bit of gas on their way back home, and the S-3 has been primarily involved in that. We learned that yesterday, for the first time in its 30-year history, that it received tasking orders for overland strikes on naval targets near Basra, and for the first time ever fired a laser-guided missile in combat, helping to take out that Iraqi naval target. Wolf?
Frank, we've heard also sorts of reports that other U.S. aircraft, whether helicopters or planes, have returned to their bases with riddled by anti-aircraft fire, although the planes returned safely. Have any planes returned to the Constellation, as far as you know, damaged because of Iraqi anti-aircraft fire?
Well, as far as we know, Wolf, not a single aircraft has been damaged. They tell us that the air defense systems, while they do encounter AAA, while they do see the surface-to-air firings from time to time, generally speaking, without giving away too much in the way of tactics, these fighter aircraft are able to operate at a significant altitude, even when they're providing the close air support. They're able to use some of the weapons, particularly the GPS-guided weapons and the laser-guided weapons, that once a target is designated, they can release those weapons at some altitude, often out of the reach or out of the way of AAA fire or the surface-to-air firing.
All right, Frank Buckley aboard the USS Constellation, doing some good reporting as usual. Thanks, Frank, very much. Aaron, back to you.
I think it is a wonderful shot there. The pilots writing on their hands some of the notes they need to keep in mind. As one of the pilots said, it's very intense up there. It is not just the Constellation, it is the Abraham Lincoln that is also sending pilots into the sky. Kira Phillips is embedded with the carrier of the USS Abraham Lincoln and is filed from there today.
Flight operations continue here on the USS Abraham Lincoln, an extreme focus on the troops on the ground in Iraq. A lot of concern about the safety of the troops, a lot of concern about the POWs. Strike fighter pilots here want to prevent any type of additional POW situations. The mission CAS, Close Air Support. These are the missions that are taking place through the day, through the night. Lieutenant Commander Scott Snow has been flying these missions throughout the day today. We're going to talk about the most recent one that he had. The CAS mission that you had, the objectives today with regard to protecting the troops on the ground as they've been moving into Iraq.
Yes, today we were basically heading just north of one of the southern cities and clearing a path for our troops to work their way up towards Baghdad.
Tell me how that, we're going to pause for just a minute. Had a Prowler safely land there, coming back from flight operations as they continue. Tell me the communication that goes on between you and the troops, the forward air control, the facts on the ground, and how you communicate and how you try to prevent a potential threat to the troops on the ground.
Well, we talked to the forward air controller. He tells us where the friendlies are, the threats, the enemy order of battle, the targets he would like taken out, descriptions, a lat long, and any restrictions for the run-ins, and what types of ordnance he would like to use on that. If he has any marks, artillery rounds or anything he could throw into the area to show us a little closer where it is, and then we'll go ahead and prosecute targets on his approval at that point.
I have to ask you, when the news came out about the POWs, how did it affect you personally? How did it affect the other pilots here on the USS Abraham Lincoln?
Well, at first it angered me quite a bit, and it still does. And it also steeled my resolve to be there until the very last bullet is expended and the very last drop of my gas is expended to protect the guys and the lives of the guys on the ground.
So will these close air support missions continue, and will they increase?
Yes, they'll continue. They'll increase. It's better for us to come and take the targets out from a more survivable position up in anywhere from 5 to 10 to 20,000 feet instead of the helicopters down low where they're vulnerable to a AAA fire.
Lieutenant Commander Scott Snow, thank you very much. So the flight operations will continue here off the USS Abraham Lincoln. Extreme focus on protecting the troops on the ground. Weather, of course, has become a problem. The sandstorms kicking up in Iraq, also storms out here in the Persian Gulf. Lightning and rain has been taking place, but it doesn't stop the missions that come off of this carrier. It also doesn't prevent one moment, please, as we have a landing coming in here. A Prowler landing here on the USS Abraham Lincoln. Once again, the weather not affecting the dropping of ordnance, the JDAMs, the GPS-guided weapons. The advantage of those weapons is that they can combat any type of weather. Flight operations, once again, continuing off the USS Abraham Lincoln. I'm Kira Phillips. Back to you.
Well, you just can't imagine, unless you've been there, how noisy it is aboard an aircraft carrier when those planes are taking off and coming back. There are new concerns tonight, as there have been for the last 3 nights now, about Iraqi chemical weapons. There are reports that chemical weapons are in the hands of the Republican Guard in the Baghdad area with authorization to use them should U.S. forces cross a line. CNN's national security correspondent David Ensor now has had about 24 hours to work through this story. David, what are you able to report tonight?
Well, Aaron, as you know, if a military unit wants to use chemical weapons against its enemy, it has to protect its own forces. And it's evidence that that protection is being done by the Iraqis to prevent some kind of blowback if the wind should change that is causing all the concern among U.S. officials.
The evidence is accumulating that Iraq may be planning to use chemical weapons, gas masks turning up in abandoned trenches. In Nasiriyah, in a building marked as a hospital, U.S. Marines found weapons, atropine antidote kits, and that was not all.
They found over 3,000 chemical suits and gas masks,
as well as a number of Iraqi military uniforms.
The findings are heightening concerns among coalition forces approaching Baghdad since, as the Iraqis should know, U.S. and British forces do not use chemical weapons. U.S. officials say some intelligence indicates a red line may have been drawn around the capital, with Republican Guard units ordered to use chemical weapons once U.S. and allied troops cross it. There is also, intelligence officials say, suggesting Republican Guard units have been issued artillery shells containing chemical agents.
There has been intelligence scraps, who knows how accurate they are, chatter in the system that suggests that the closer that coalition forces get to Baghdad and to Tikrit, the greater the likelihood, and that some command and control arrangements have been put in place.
In Baghdad, Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz repeated his government's stand. It does not have any kind of weapons of mass destruction.
When they started to talk about the weapons of mass destruction, we know, and we always knew, that that was fabrication and lies.
Experts say Saddam Hussein's forces will likely try to hold out in Baghdad for as long as possible without using the weapons his government insists it does not have, hoping to build international pressure on the U.S. and Britain to back down.
In that sense, any use of chemical weapons would be counterproductive to Saddam because it would only galvanize international opinion around the United States.
But if the coalition forces cannot be deterred that way, then, says Ken Pollack, all bets may be off.
And he will use chemical warfare to prevent the United States from taking Baghdad and to inflict as many casualties as he can on U.S. forces in hope that that will convince the United States to stop the war.
Gas, gas, gas!
But U.S. and allied forces are well equipped and trained against chemical weapons.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Myers, has said that in the event the Iraqis should use chemical weapons, the U.S. does have a military response planned. He was no more specific than that. Aaron?
David, thank you. David Ensor. We've all seen the pictures over the last couple of days, the two young American helicopter pilots who were taken POW on Monday. More on that story has emerged today, the story of how their comrades tried to rescue them. Coming up later, next, the battle over the dollar, and yes, it has turned into a political fight of sorts between the president and the Congress. Our coverage of the war in Iraq continues here on CNN.
If it didn't have so much style, it'd be just like any other midsize car. Get a 2003 Saturn L Series Ion or View at 0% APR financing for 5 years. For restrictions, see your retailer.
When conditions are at their worst, Quest people are at their best.
We know sometimes disaster strikes.
Floods, fires, hurricanes,
earthquake in Seattle.
I think we rise to those challenges.
Situations like that where minutes count.
Helping their customers.
Employees have always rallied around blizzards.
We are comforted in the knowledge that we can respond quickly when needed.
I mean, you realize, how important what you do is.
To the customer, we are the front line. The spirit of service, there for you.
You decided. Once again, CNN is #1 for trust and experience. Americans choose CNN as the most credible news source. CNN is the most trusted name in news.
As U.S. forces battle for the upper hand in Iraq, President Bush begins fighting for his supplemental war budget. In the meantime, an unexpected setback for his latest tax cut proposal. For details on both of these stories, let's bring in our White House correspondent, Suzanne Malveaux. Suzanne?
Well, Wolf, President Bush is urging Congress to pass that emergency spending bill in 3 weeks before the Easter recess. There are two things to keep in mind about the supplemental. First, it only covers 6 months of expenses. And secondly, the cost is going to be picked up 100% by the American taxpayer.
President Bush unveiled his much-awaited cost estimate of the U.S. war with Iraq, nearly $75 billion over a 6-month period.
The wartime supplemental is directly related to winning this war.
and to securing the peace that will follow this war. I ask Congress to act quickly and responsibly.
The total emergency spending bill is $74.7 billion, $63 billion of that for the prosecution of the war, $8 billion for international operations, relief, and short-term reconstruction, including aid for U.S. allies, and $4 billion for Homeland Security. But the Pentagon cautions this figure could dramatically change.
The budget figure the president announced up there is not the cost of the war. The budget figure he announced up there is the cost of some money the state needs, some money the CIA needs, some money that Homeland Security needs. If you can't tell how long it's going to last, you sure can't tell what it's going to cost.
Unlike the Persian Gulf War, which was paid almost exclusively by U.S. allies, 100% of the cost of this war will be picked up by U.S. taxpayers. But in a clear message to the Bush administration, some in Congress are concerned about how the U.S. will pay for this war. The Senate voted to slash the president's $726 billion tax cut package by more than half.
The House passed Mr. Bush's version in all likelihood with the Senate and the House Conference Committee. It'll be somewhere in between that figure of $350 to $700+ billion for that tax cut package. As for the supplemental, it is expected to pass in the 3 weeks that the president has given Congress. There are members of the Democratic Party, of course, who want more money for Homeland Security. It's also expected that members of Congress will throw in some of their own pet projects. It's probably going to be more than $75 billion. And Aaron, when it comes to long-term expenses, and when it comes to reconstruction, they are looking for Iraqi oil to pay for that, as well as the frozen assets from Iraqi regime as well. Aaron?
Suzanne, thank you. Suzanne Malveaux at the White House covering a couple of strains of the story. Saudi Arabia today called for the war to end. The Saudi press agency saying the country's foreign minister wants a solution to the crisis that, quote, is within the international legitimate framework. U.S. officials deny reports that the Saudis have offered any formal peace proposal. And in any case, the White House says that any plan that would leave Saddam Hussein in power in Iraq is not workable. Surprising news from the pilot, or the father rather, of one of the two.
About 75,000 troops actually on the ground inside Iraq. And the commander of American forces there wants to reinforce them in a hurry. So 700 soldiers from Fort Polk, Louisiana will be flown into the war zone as fast as the planes can get them there.
The mission of the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment will be to shut down the attacks which have turned the supply lines leading to the front into ambush alleys. These reinforcements will protect the rear against the unexpectedly fierce attacks from Saddam's so-called Fedayeen fighters, which just yesterday Defense Secretary Rumsfeld claimed had not come as a surprise.
The resistance that's being encountered was expected. It has not affected coalition progress.
But the Marines are behind schedule, and firefights have broken out all along the supply lines. Combined with the blowing sands, the attacks are complicating the drive toward Baghdad. But for the record, the Pentagon's Lieutenant General Stanley McChrystal insists there's no delay in the battle plan.
It is not thrown the force off its plan. The logistics have continued to flow smoothly. Additional forces continue to push forward.
The toughest fighting is in the south, but the target remains Baghdad. Today, the Navy fired cruise missiles filled with carbon filaments designed to short-circuit Iraqi communications. Warplanes flew 1,500 missions today, but only attacked 100 targets, a sign of the effect the weather is having on the air campaign. But it is the ground campaign which will seal the fate of the Iraqi regime. The Army's 3rd Infantry Division is now gathering just 50 miles south of Baghdad outside Karbala, with the 101st Airborne Division out to the west of it. They are waiting for the Marines to arrive at Al-Qut to the east before they begin a pincer move on Baghdad. American jets continue to drop bombs on the Republican Guard divisions standing between the invasion force and Baghdad. The Iraqis are moving up their own reinforcements, although the chairman of the Joint Chiefs says they'll have a hard time getting there.
We understand there are a few vehicles that are coming south from Baghdad towards the Karbala Gap, I guess would be the general directions, and they're being engaged as we find them.
Just above Karbala, there is a huge lake, and military officers fear the Iraqis will blow the dam and flood the gap American troops would pass through on the road to Baghdad. Once the sandstorms lift and the Marines get to Al-Quds, the battle for Baghdad could begin. The attack plan is designed to catch the Iraqis by surprise and hit them from several different directions at the same time. That will be the moment when the Iraqis decide whether or not to use their chemical weapons.
David Martin, one of our combat correspondents, CBS's John Roberts, has seen firsthand the resistance and the destruction facing Allied forces. He's traveling toward Baghdad with the 1st Marine Division in Iraq.
All along this narrow corridor in the city of An-Naziriyah, there is evidence of a ferocious battle. A battle to hold 2 strategic points. This bridge over the fabled Euphrates River and one just to the north. In between, a no-man's land where 9 Marines died Sunday in an ambush. Dozens of others were wounded, a handful captured and taken prisoner. The Marines paid a heavy price for this piece of real estate. But its value is priceless for an invading force looking for the most direct route north to Baghdad. Holding it, however, requires an enormous daily expense of manpower and machines. Powerful Abrams tanks and light armored vehicles now have to guard the resupply convoys which travel this ground. Thousands of troops line the roadway, sometimes shooting between vehicles, laying down suppressing fire on Saddam's Fedayeen militia, which was responsible for Sunday's attack. The intensity of that fight stunned the Marines.
But we went right into it yesterday. It was a big wake-up call. I don't think Mortarman had fought at build-up areas for a long time. We sure as hell did yesterday.
And it also gave the first insight into Iraq's plans to disrupt the invasion. At every point along the roads leading north from An-Naziriyah, the Marines are coming under attack. Logistics trains, the most vulnerable vehicles, must stay well back from the fight. Huge traffic jams have developed as those so-called log trains wait for the road ahead to be cleared of enemy fire. And the Marine unit we are with, which fought a ferocious battle last night, was again heavily engaged tonight. Word from troops on the ground is that rather than regular Army or even militia, they believe they're meeting elements of the Republican Guard, which have moved south to blunt the American offensive. That may be true or not, but the very mention of it is an indication the opposing force is a tough one. Pentagon officials insisted today the war is going according to plan, but the Marines are already at least 36 hours behind schedule and are now faced with the prospect of having to protect every inch of their supply line while moving ahead to Baghdad. That raises the question, does the U.S. have enough boots on the ground to occupy a hostile country as large as Iraq?
John Roberts. Now we want to give you a closer look at one of the more surprising and worrisome developments in this war. As we've been reporting, the most relentless resistance U.S. forces have faced so far is believed to come from a group called Fedayeen Saddam. Translation, willing to die for Saddam. They are thought to be some 50,000 in number. Few people know much about them, but one who does is the man you are about to hear from, Mohammed Abdul Majid. He's a former major in the Iraqi army. In an interview with correspondent Randall Pinkston, Abdul Majid said that he helped set up the unit that became the Fedayeen. And some of what he had to say is instructive and chilling.
They are trained for assassination. They are trained to kill opposition members. They are trained to scare the people. They are very well, trained into scaring the people, how to horrorize them.
Is it true that people were taken out of prison and put into the unit?
Yes.
Mohammed Abdul Majid defected in 1991. He told correspondent Pinkston he helped train a new elite Iraqi military intelligence and special operations unit 13 years ago, modeled after the British SAS. But then the unit came to the attention of Saddam and his sons, who decided to turn the outfit into their own private police force, their enforcers, the Fedayeen.
Why are so many Iraqis afraid of the Fedayeen?
Because, you know, Saddam Hussein, when he presented them to the people, the first thing he did was go, for example, they went on the street chopping heads of prostitutes and sticking them on their heads in the street for other people to see.
When was this?
That was probably 3-4 years ago.
The Fedayeen did this?
The Fedayeen did this, yeah. They went in Baghdad and al-Basra, they decapitated a couple of women and stuck their heads on sticks in front of the people to terrorize the people, to tell them that we are here.
When they parade in Baghdad, the Fedayeen dress and strut like ninja warriors. But in southern Iraq, they've thrown away these outfits as they infiltrated towns and cities. Former CIA analyst Dan Byman, currently a professor at Georgetown, says there may be up to 50,000 Fedayeen. Who are these guys? Who makes up the Fedayeen?
The Fedayeen are primarily comprised of essentially thugs drawn from the countryside who were recruited by Saddam's older son to join this unit.
Basically, do they have uniforms? Do they use uniforms?
They have uniforms that are not typical military uniforms, but what we've seen again and again is they're blending in with the civilian population, that they are taking off those uniforms because then they can strike more effectively as guerrillas.
Let's talk about the rules of war, the Geneva Convention, guidelines for conducting war. The Fedayeen leadership would be acquainted with that?
The Fedayeen leadership would regard that as a joke, that the rules of war are something written by the strong, and these rules of war favor the United States because they cannot compete on conventional combat, so therefore they should be disregarded because they won't work.
Are they terrorists?
They are 100% terrorists, as far as we Iraqis are concerned.
And they have blended in with other Iraqi militias and forces, fanning out all over Iraq, threatening to kill not only American soldiers, but Iraqis too.
We've heard reports that Fedayeen are under orders to shoot any Iraqi soldier who wants to surrender. Is that true?
This is definitely true. Fedayeen Saddam will shoot soldiers, civilians, their own people, their own family members, in order to protect Saddam Hussein and his regime at the moment, especially at this time.
There are Fedayeen in Nasiriyah, Abdul Majid says, and they are ready to kill anyone who wants to revolt against Saddam.
They have nowhere to go to. They have to fight because there's somebody watching over them with a gun.
If they don't fight?
They will be killed. Yesterday, on Al Jazeera TV said, we will kill, from Fedayeen Saddam, said we will kill the Americans and kill everyone who would not kill Americans. And I thought, you know, that was a big message.
In the desert sandstorms outside Nasiriyah, the Fedayeen have disrupted some of the American battle plan and created problems for unit commanders like Colonel Curtis Potts from the Army's 3rd Division.
The disturbing thing about these folks is the tactics they're using. They're using Iraqi families as human shields, as you witnessed last night. I cannot believe that a leader of a nation would do that to his people. So it angers me that this is what they have to do in order to fight the coalition forces. But we'll get through it.
The Fedayeen surprised American intelligence and eventually Colonel Potts and other commanders by moving into southern Iraq. They were predicted to stay in Baghdad to protect Saddam Hussein. Many of them come from Saddam's own tribe, far away in the north. They're better paid than most regular soldiers, and they are fanatically loyal to the dictator and his sons.
We've heard reports that Saddam trusts the Fedayeen more than the Republican Guard. Is that true?
Saddam Hussein does not trust anyone. Saddam Hussein trusts only himself. But he always, you know, have units watching other units. You know, he has the Republican Guards, but he has the Special Republican Guards watching over the Republican Guards. Then he has the special apparatus, you know, that is watching over the Special Republican Guards. And now he has got the Fedayeen Saddam that also will be watching over the Republican Guards and all the rest. So probably, you know, because the head of this unit is his son, so there should be the most trustworthy.
There's strong reason to believe that some of the early Americans taken prisoner in this war were executed with shots to the head. Would that have been Fedayeen style?
It certainly is their style to execute prisoners they take. When we've seen them repress internal revolts, they have shown almost no mercy. But again, it's very hard to tell whether it was the Fedayeen or another unit, whether it was done just after the heat of battle when emotions were running high, or whether it was a cold, deliberate decision done with no sense of vengeance.
Is it true that Fedayeen would kill their own relatives, their own parents?
They would kill their own brother.
To protect Saddam?
Yes.
Saddam says this former Iraqi army major will do anything to protect himself. And he suspects American POWs may have been brought to Saddam's bunker.
The POWs now, they are underground, protected, near him. He's clever. Saddam's, he's as much POWs as he can, bring them near his headquarters.
The American POWs
Yes.
are now very close to Saddam.
Yes, somewhere around underneath the earth, 10 stories underneath, probably 8 stories underneath, somewhere around his headquarters. He'll keep them next to him.
8 stories underground?
Oh yes, oh yes. He's got buildings underneath the ground with that Western companies built for him.
Are you in touch with your former military colleagues who are still inside Iraq?
Well,
you were.
I can't say no.
Former Iraqi Army Major Abdul Majid thinks it would be a mistake to get sucked in by the Fedayeen. Keep moving, he says. Don't get distracted by the Fedayeen. Keep moving into Baghdad.
If you were to be asked to advise the American military commanders as to how to proceed from this point forward, what would you say? What's the best way to bring this conflict to a quick and successful end for U.S. and allied forces?
Push towards Baghdad. Don't enter any cities. Just Baghdad. Go to the heart. Topple the regime. And then the cities will definitely, after, once the regime is gone, the people will know that the regime is gone. I'm sure that the war will finish.
60 Minutes 2 continues in a moment. Scott Pelley with a group of Marines who are facing an enemy they didn't expect.
Tomorrow at exactly 6:02 a.m., a cargo jet will fly through this airspace. At 7:42 a.m., a once-in-a-lifetime business deal will arrive in this office. At 2:06 p.m., 20,000 computer chips will leave this distribution center. At 3 p.m., a letter of credit worth 3 million euros will move across these lines. At 4:21 p.m., a shipment of soccer cleats will immediately clear customs. And at 7 p.m., the exact location of 300,000 packages will bounce off this satellite. Only one company in the world can tell you exactly when these things will happen. Because only one company in the world is synchronized enough to make them happen. UPS. Commerce. Synchronized.
Don't tell me you put that in.
Yeah.
I gotta see this.
How sure are you about your wiring skills? Come into Ace, the helpful place.
This year, 1 out of every 4 Americans will have a tax bill hanging over their head. Now you can have more time to pay it. You can delay paying until July 15th, free with our Easy Pay loan program.
This whole drugs and terror thing, I mean, it's a very complicated issue. A complicated issue? Complicated. Very complicated.
No drug buyers, no drug money, no drug money, no drug dealers, no drug dealers, no drug murders, shootings, bribery, corruption.
Not that complicated.
Tuesday.
I need to have a talk with you.
When you're teaching your kid to just say no, expect some tough questions.
Did you ever do drugs?
And will Amy's romantic night on the town
This is actually the no smoking section.
go up in smoke?
Why can't you keep Sister Curly Hair under control?
That's it. You know what? That is incredibly rude, sir.
All new Judging Amy, CBS Tuesday.
This week of war has been the first experience in battle for many young Americans, and it has been a baptism by fire.
Correspondent Scott Pelley and producer Bill Owens made their way to the front lines with a small group of Marines as the ground war began. What they saw and heard with the soldiers of Fox Company was frightening and sobering. As the troops fought for control of Qasr, the critical Iraqi port, the Marines found themselves fighting an enemy they never expected and sometimes couldn't even recognize. It began the moment they made their dash through the desert in the middle of the night.
For the Marines of Fox Company, the war began with light and thunder. That's their pre-dawn assault up ahead alongside British Royal Marines. The first casualties that night were their preconceived notions of the enemy.
It was supposed to be a relatively easy target, just a lot of workers, not any resistance at all. And then the day before we came in, they told us they moved a tank regiment in the area, and just, you know, they had a bunch of Republican Guard or at least regular Army down here. So we came across a breach and immediately took contact.
Sergeant Robert Coppola from LA was among the first Americans to roll through the breach and into the fire.
He encountered fire right away. Within 200 meters. Within 200 meters, taking enemy artillery and fire from dug-in positions. So it was definitely, you know, we had to rethink and recock what we were doing as far as when we got here. Our whole posture had to change from, you know, being a little lackadaisical to, you know, we're going into a battle. So. What was that fire like coming over the border? It was a lot of direct fire weapons, machine guns, small arms, and then we actually started taking artillery fire over our positions and hit a couple of our trucks. And, I mean, rounds going over our heads, so it was a little nerve-wracking at first because, you know, we had no idea they were firing artillery at us.
Their objective was the port at Qasr. They took it without much of a fight, but they soon found that keeping it was a rolling battle.
We have 4 personnel standing by in the open building. They're clustered at the same doorway.
That building with the tower in front of it, right?
Correct!
Fox Company met resistance from an enemy they didn't recognize. Days after taking the port, they were under attack from Iraqis wearing civilian clothes
White flag on it.
and waving a white flag. Captain Rick Crevier is the commander of Fox Company.
What have you learned about the enemy that you didn't know 5 days ago?
Well, I certainly thought we would have the laws of war would be understood. I didn't think that we were going to be encountering enemy carrying white flags and dressed in civilian gear. We've learned that they don't respect the white flags. We've learned that they've waved white flags at us and again gone back to their defensive positions, and so it requires us to have our head on a swivel, and we need to be situationally aware. And so again, a hostile act is hostile intent. If we see them with firearms, we're going to take them down.
Puts you in a hell of a spot.
It puts my men in a difficult spot. These men have performed superbly out here, and very successfully, and I think you're right, it has put us in a awful spot.
You're not going to drop your weapon when you see a white flag? No. Not anymore?
No way.
No way.
I think it's mainly what we're encountering is just infantry or Iraqi infantry that's just too cowardly to wear their uniform and stand up and fight us. They're using basically terrorist techniques to try to inflict onesies and twosies casualties instead of fighting us like men.
They're the tactics of a desperate army, being confronted by men like Corporal Mike Breslin of Maryland, who was in that firefight on the Hill.
And I was looking at this building, and I saw a guy in a uniform run by from where we've been taking fire from. So Staff Sergeant told us to open up, and I just had my machine guns open up. Started firing on the building, and then the javelins took shots. We had a mortar up there doing assault fire mode on that area, and then the tanks rolled in and destroyed the whole area. I think the only way they can fight us, they can't fight us face to face because no one can combine arms like the Marine Corps can. I mean, from the fire team level all the way up to the battalion, we have that locked down. That's what we do best. And they can't come at us face to face because we can call air in from the ships. We got tanks, you know, right nearby, and you know, organic deep squad. We have enough firepower to knock any enemy flat on their ass. So they have to do this little hit and run tactics because they can't win any other way. And they're not going to win. They're just trying to take out individual Marines so they can, I don't know, feel good about it or something.
The hit and run is repeating itself all over southern Iraq. When the main Allied force moves through, Iraqi troops fill in from behind, shooting up convoys headed in every direction and harassing troops left behind to hold the ground. Much of southern Iraq is a no man's land. With the iron grip no longer holding them, towns are in free fall. We visited a hospital where the wounded were suffering and dying without doctors or medicine. An angry crowd showed us their dead. And because we were the only Americans they'd seen, they begged us for food, water, and police to restore order.
We need government. I said we need government help. We need government help. The more stolen help, more thieves help.
Have thieves?
Yeah.
You want a government to stabilize what's happening now?
Yeah.
No one's in control?
No one's in control.
This chaos is the reason Fox Company is defending the port. Qusar is where humanitarian aid will land, perhaps as important a weapon as any in breaking Saddam's regime. Fox Company is camped in a warehouse on the port. There's no electricity, no toilets. They're short on water, long on boredom, familiar to every Marine. The men call themselves the Raiders, and they don't like you to forget that. The company's full of 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They're isolated, no news from home, no news of the wider war, no scores from the Final Four. Most of the time, not even the shortwave draws home any closer. Scott Amarant's home is back in the San Francisco Bay Area.
You know, you're out here on this loading dock. I can't get away from the image of a company of Marines being stored in a warehouse here. You guys don't have much to live on.
This is home. Nice and soft. It's nothing worse than we've done before, so I mean, this is how we live whenever every training op we go, so it's nothing different.
You got no electricity, you got no running water, you got nothing. Nothing but a box of MREs here.
And all these guys, so that's all we need, really.
Yeah, it's an honor to be amongst what we would call these band of brothers. And so these Marines, unfortunately, I'm at a loss of words to describe what these folks have been doing for me and to the people in their nation.
Okay, we're moving out of 1400.
Crevier's band is from across the 50 states, but the 50 stars stay wrapped. They're not supposed to show the flag. They got in trouble with the Pentagon for raising the Stars and Stripes over the port. No one's supposed to get the idea that America is here to stay. Over the last several days, attacks on the port have all but stopped, and Crevier doesn't think the enemy will last much longer.
Why do you think they'll capitulate soon?
They can only stand so much of our artillery. And so we're rolling tanks on them. Where we see fire, if we're drawing fire, we roll tanks on it, and quickly you start to understand that there's no other alternative but to capitulate or to surrender.
Do you think the enemy units you're encountering are getting resupplied?
No. That's why I think this area will be taken quickly.
They're going to run out of food, water, and bullets at some point.
We've controlled the waterways. We've controlled the roads getting in and out of here. There's no way that they can get resupplied.
That control firmed up this week so that Fox Company and other elements of the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit left Qusar for fresh combat up north. The British will now hold the town. Qusar is the first and only significant town held by the Allies. The guns aren't quite silent, but it is close enough for the Army to rush in the first humanitarian aid in Iraq.
Shooting occurred this morning a few hours ago. So as it stands right now, 4-2 Commando, which is another British unit, is in the area as well patrolling since the shooting still occurs.
Captain James Thorpe runs an Army Civil Affairs team that will bring water and power and food back to this city of 15,000. Army and British forces are opening the taps on clean water. The first these families have seen in more than a week.
Major, why do these people not have water?
The situation is this. Basra, it's a city just north of us, is normally the location where drinking water comes from for these folks here in Qusar. As it turns out, just before the war started, approximately 4 or 5 days before it did, the water that normally flows down here via truck was turned off.
By who?
Well, basically by the ruling party, Ba'athist Party, and I guess Saddam Hussein. to rebuild Iraq. We want to go to a situation where they are stable, they can take care of themselves within the next couple months, and we as Americans can pull out, and the British.
And what we are seeing right now behind us is the very first phase of that. It's
Absolutely.
just beginning.
In fact, this is probably the first time it's occurred in country right now. Yes.
First time it's occurred in country.
Absolutely. Because it was the first town that we've actually had somewhat control over, and that we can go out and actually help people as it stands right now.
So many were children asking, is the water good? Is it good? Hardly able to believe that here was water that they could drink. This was also the first time Iraqis came en masse to meet the troops that had swept through their country. Most seemed grateful, but some were not. One man told us, I have 6 children. We have no food or electricity. Why have you done this to us? But others rushed down the street as if to witness the beginning of a new world, still not quite trusting what was happening. On the water line, a man speaking perfect English came up to me. He wanted to thank the Americans for the water. I asked him if he'd do an interview with me on camera. He looked over both shoulders and whispered, there are detectives everywhere. The old regime, I asked him, and he nodded yes. He said, we'll talk another time. I asked him what the water meant to him, and he said, the liberation of the Iraqi people. But we'll talk another time. I'm in a rush. I have to go. The reach of Saddam still holds territory on the ground and in the mind. But on one street, in the only town now held by the Allies, his regime appears to be slipping like water through the fingers. Americans like Randy Butel may just be witnessing the first free citizens of a new Iraq.
I got a little niece and nephew back home. They're real young.
It's good to be able to make a difference.
Yes, it is.
When these kids came running across the street.
Yes.
What'd you think?
It's hard to explain. Feeling of joy. Now I know why I'm here.
Life may not be as easy as pushing a button, but with e-file from the IRS, your taxes can be. It's the fastest, surest way to get your taxes behind you. So ask your tax preparer or visit us on the web.
You know, we're never in the same place at the same time. No, not really. So we need a plan that allows us to talk, you know, as much as we want, all the time, whenever we want. And then no extra charge.
With Singular's Family Talk plan, call each other for free with unlimited mobile-to-mobile calling. Get 5,000 night and weekend minutes to share, up to 3 additional lines, and up to 4 free phones.
We call it the Conley Brothers. What's up? What's up? What's up plan?
Come in and find out how Singular fits you best.
A lot of medicines throw around the word fast. Fast relief of this, fast relief of that. But I don't know what fast means. So when Excedrin said it starts relieving headaches within 15 minutes, I said, that I understand. I didn't believe it, but I gave it a shot. And it worked. I started feeling relief within 15 minutes. So is that what fast means? I don't know. But it means I'm taking Excedrin for headaches.
Excedrin, the headache medicine.
Where does Washington get its intelligence on Iraq and the Middle East? There's probably no foreign source as valuable as the Mossad. That's Israel's intelligence agency, and its reputation borders on the mythological. It's been so secret that the name of the Mossad chief was only made public in 1996. Ephraim Halevi, the man who led the Mossad for the last 4 years, came out of the shadows for a rare interview when he retired a few months ago. He told us how he believes the Middle East will be turned upside down in ways very few can imagine, and that it was all triggered by September 11.
You made some pretty strong statements about what September 11 signified.
I said it was the beginning of the Third World War.
And Ephraim Halevi says the invasion of Iraq is just another battle in that world war. His words carry weight. Even though he looks more like a college professor than like James Bond, the British-born Halevi was head of an agency which specializes in eliminating Israel's enemies. He says taking out Saddam Hussein will send a message to other Arab leaders in the region.
I believe that after what happens in Iraq, one way or another, people will have to think again and to think hard as to how they want to assess their own roles and what way they want to go after this first precedent has been enacted.
Some Arabs will certainly be outraged by America attacking Iraq. Others may feel, the Americans mean business this time. It's time to hunker down. Which do you think will be the predominant reaction?
I think a lot will depend on the speed of the action.
You think it should be as fast as possible?
I think that time is of the essence, yes.
Days?
Days, I mean, days, certainly not months. If it drags on into months and months and months, it's a different story.
Halevi believes Saddam is under the illusion that he can survive this war with the Americans just as he did the last, and he'll do almost anything to ensure that survival.
Hunkered down, do you think he'll go with chemical weapons?
He might use whatever he has in the last stand. He might, yes.
But Saddam's not the only bully in the neighborhood. Halevi and the Israelis happen to be a lot more worried about Iran than they are about Saddam, and they think the Americans should be too. But Halevi thinks there'll be good news here. The Ayatollahs may be marching towards nuclear weapons, but they may also be marching off stage.
I have a minority opinion of one in this country, and I believe that there is a chance that there is a possibility that there will be a change in Iran and that there will be a regime change from within in Iran.
How long do you think it's going to take for the mullahs to fall?
I think it might take less than other people think.
Give me an estimate.
Oh. I think that one of the defining dates is going to be 2004, when you have the election for the new Iranian president.
And if that's not enough, Halevi, the ex-Mossad chief, predicts 2003 will be the last year in power for Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat.
Neither he nor Saddam Hussein are going to live out this year as leaders of their countries and peoples.
You're saying that by 2004, Arafat's not going to be in power, Saddam's not going to be in power, and the mullahs might not be in power.
Might not be, yes.
We might be looking towards a new Middle East?
A new Middle East, yes, yes, we might, yes.
It's all part of a seismic shift, Halevi says, and the public hasn't felt the tremors yet.
I think things are happening which are much more profound than the ordinary man in the street believes are happening or is capable of feeling.
60 Minutes 2, a CBS News magazine, continues in a moment.
Luke Wilson, Kelly Preston, and Tay Diggs tonight on The Late Show.
Hi, I'm Joe Shortsleeve. Here's what we're working on for 11 o'clock tonight. From road closures to traffic detours, we'll show you how to steer clear of all the big dig confusion. And when the war started, they decided to enlist. We'll tell you about an extraordinary sister act from Massachusetts. Join Lisa and me at 11.
I'm Jack Williams. Join me for Finding a Family, a Wednesday's Child special. Wednesday, April 2nd at 7 p.m. on WBZ4.